reality.
It's so astonishing thinking about how much things have changed. My mom, all of our parents and stuff, they were born in caribou skin tents or igloos, and now they have nice houses.
Well,
and
this transitional period from outpost camp to modern television is a very short period of time. Part of my childhood, from 10 till now, has been nothing but change.
With Charles P. Rodney Chandler as the Beatle beat goes on.
Say something for peace, Kyoko, please.
In a white room with black curtains near the station. Black roof country, no gold pavements, tired starlings. Silver horses ran down moonbeams in your dark eyes. Dawnlight smile on you leaving.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Could you tell us a little bit about how things like the civil rights movements and peace and love and war kinds of things affected Inuit back in the 60s?
When we were students, there was another group of Inuit that were trying to change the face of the North. Those people, I think, really were watching people like Martin Luther King that was going through this revolution to try and uplift his people from this pit that you can get into where you have no respect for yourself.
When the Inuit movement was happening, there was lots of other movement, like the civil rights movement in America, and lots of these stuff happening around the world, like democracy versus communism. Like, what effect did that have on you personally and lots of the Inuit leaders? Do you think they looked up upon Martin Luther King, or?
There was a lot happening. Certainly some of the American Indian movement were in the region, fleeing the authorities, and a lot of people getting to the point where they felt that, this is enough.
The Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land.
In the 1960s in Canada, a lot of young Indigenous activists made the connection between where their place had been in the colonial period and the decolonization that was going on elsewhere in the world. The empires that had been created in the preceding 150 years were breaking up.
1960s was a year that new generation is taking into more what I would call revolutionary ideas.
When did things start coming together to move towards change?
I think it actually happened because of oil. There was so much exploration activity, and we could see that we were losing control of our land.
There were a lot of different companies trying to locate oil and gas reserves, multitudes of them, and people were still running very large trap lines. And people were seeing the seismic crew coming. No one knew. Where did it come from? Who told them to be here? And some of the techniques that they were using were like dynamite in the lakes and things like that. So everybody was after it. And no one really cared much about, well, there are just some people up here, but it looks like a big land, so what are we worried about,
Basically, I don't believe they should be permitted to control it any more than other Canadians are permitted to control projects. In other words, if we get to a position where any group or individual in this country could in fact stop something that was in the national interest all by themselves, I don't think we really any longer have a Canadian government that is effective for the people in Canada.
We are not even acknowledged anywhere, shape or form in law that we were the first people and we had right to be above anybody else. Doesn't work that way. Everybody's all the same. That's the way the system works.
Do you think there's relations to apartheid and land claim struggles?
That's a good question. I'd say so.
The struggle for land claims is like a minor apartheid, the way I see it. Like it puts you down and tries to keep you the way you are, and we don't want to make you any more powerful. And it's the struggle like Nelson Mandela.
They're fighting to,
to
recognize their rights.
It's basic human rights that they were fighting for, and same here, same in Labrador, same in Nunavut, same in Nunavut and Innu Valley.
The federal government generated what was called the White Paper, in which they really adopted a policy of assimilation.
That White Paper said that the resources of the North would be developed in the interest of all Canadians. And young Northern leaders like Tagak and others said, what does that mean? And the Indians were asking the same question. Where's the development going to take place in our interest?
We didn't know how to deal with all that, but the first thing was to get on our feet, stand up together.
What were the first things that you did?
Well, I started writing to many people as I can, and handwriting letters to elders and people, intellectuals that I know, like Armin Tagogna, people who are really brilliant, people that I've heard, and they were writing to me, and it was scary, you know. People writing with the deep sobs in their hearts. He knew it.
Understanding.
Scary.
We had some fairly good friends, and they said, you'll never get anywhere until you institutionalize yourself. And, you know, then you have an organization. I mean, why? I mean, we're organized anyway. We're a group of people. So that's where we started with the Land Claims Organization or the Aboriginal Rights Organizations.
Our mentality was to take over the jobs, but then there was some other people that want to take over the whole political landscape of the Arctic. They were talking about self-government. They were talking about having a land claims, and we said, what is land claims? No concept of what a land claims is. We want to take over the land, but we already have it. No, you don't. That kind of concept was quite mind-boggling.
Of course, our people didn't understand what land claims was. The older generation kept asking us, why do we need to claim our homeland? It's our home. It's our land.
We tried to tell them they never surrendered the land. They never lost it in the war. They never sold it. They never signed a treaty. So it was still yours. It's just that it's not yours.
Many of our parents were concerned about that we were no longer acting like nice little Eskimos.
What do you mean by that?
Well, before then, we were always nice little Eskimos who did as they were told and didn't question authority very much. We decided to not be so nice all the time.
Challenges and frustrations that you faced during those early stages?
Mainly ignorance and hostility from the government side. So we had a hard time moving governments from their fixed positions. We learned that we had to do it through public relations, that we had to speak to the Canadian people directly.
The native peoples are seeking their land claims before
That's
the
it exactly,
pipeline is
Pierre.
built.
Exactly. John Amagoalek is our guest.
But what do they really want? Is it money?
Well, what they want is whatever is left of what we had before Columbus, before Martin Frobisher, before those people came.
Do you think that is a possibility?
It seems like a very difficult thing to do, but when people are fighting for something which is very precious to them, it's very difficult not to try it.
Amongst people throughout other parts of the developing world that I have noticed, very often the alternative is given them. Do you want jobs and what we call prosperity in the Western world, or do you want to hold on to your land?
There's no arguing about some benefits from development, but you know, the type of benefits that people talk about are very short-term benefits. You know, people have to start realizing that you can only take so much out of the earth. The earth is only so big, and you can only take so much out of it. When it's gone, it's gone.
What role did media and communications have in the success of the Inuit movement?
The Inuit were curious objects for the press. Eh?
Yeah.
The traditional image of the Canadian society was that Inuit were always smiling, friendly, and they never worried about tomorrow. Eh? Overnight, that sort of changed. Eh? No longer the word Eskimo was used. Inuit was the identity. So the press had a tremendous, I think, overnight kind of a exposure of Inuit into national scene.
Make the Indians and the Inuit more determined than ever to establish their own forms of government. Whit Fraser, CBC News, Yellowknife.
We were carrying all this stuff on the air. This was a good story, and people were listening, but they were responding. And politicians were getting a message that they had better deal fairly and squarely and honestly with what's happening in the North with Northern people. And I think that's when the climate began to change.
It never fails to blow my mind whenever I think of the fast-paced change that Inuit have gone through, the adaptation and the organization that they had to go through. But I always knew that there was a lot of change. Like, my mom would tell us stories of dog teaming and caribou skin tents. You know, we're sitting around the furnace while she's telling us these stories in our nice house.
It must have been really hard on them to become experts at this political game, and they're speaking on behalf of people who don't even know what politics is.
Could you take us now into the times of negotiation, what it was like?
When the negotiations began, these were complex, because the government wanted minimal agreements for the land claims and Aboriginal rights. Very tough time during the 70s and 80s.
How did that make you feel, like the government?
Well, we had to be right on our toes at all times.
What happens is that you get into a negotiation, like when you're trying to settle land claims, you have the government who has all the power behind them and hundreds of people working on a claim, and then you have us, the Inuit, trying to negotiate with all these people, and there's only a small group of people. And you get very tired and stressed out sometimes because you don't have the same resources as the other party that you're negotiating with, and sometimes you have to keep going for years.
During those years, what was it like? What were some of the bigger challenges?
I think it was more of everything was legal. How do I say legal terminology? Legal terminology was constantly used.
Terminology ila at ukaw si dokpad lan nakave kisian yung kayak to misik kaktiga kakave inun utira kang mata tan no natakot tiga susumaya po.
Ila isuqamma makuninga uqawsing ninyo taning sakitigi akakparoktugut sulu government to sakna pata ma isma bakla. How am I going to put this in Inuktitut? So lutaklitit dageroktu kisene unikakparoktugut, trying to explain what that word meant. So
make a whole paragraph.
Maybe one whole paragraph or two. But one of the things that I found out was that the fact that the government was so they didn't have any real concept of what we were going after, because they've never been up here. They didn't have any clue what we were talking about a lot of times. So there was a lot of explanation to the government, because, you know, these guys were from Ottawa.
They didn't know what to say or how to deal with things like royalties and entities of public self-government with real legal powers. They never had to deal with that stuff before, and they didn't know what to do. There was a new minister every few months. There was a new prime minister every 4 years. We had to deal with this revolving door.
May I call a meeting to order? And if
we were put into responsibilities that normally would require a lot of experience and probably a high level of academic education. So sometimes it was a struggle, and sometimes it showed in certain individuals that it was a struggle, and it wasn't easy.
It takes a lot of willpower to be able to pull yourself through it. My wife, who reared 4 children, because I was gone almost all the time, if I didn't have that kind of support at home, I wouldn't have been able to do it, you know? It's very easy for me to understand why marriages have broken up over land claim negotiation. People have turned to alcohol and even drugs, and even to the stage of, in a couple of cases, maybe very close to, if not committing suicide.
I'm surprised the federal government negotiators never did seem to have any problems, I guess. But I think out of frustrations, we drank a lot, we partied a lot, and I think that kind of took some of the toll.
I can't imagine how hard those years must have been.
I mean, there was one of our negotiators, and he was there for a few years, but he committed suicide. I think, you know, one tends to lose something out at the end. That's the type of things that a lot of the Inuit didn't see, how hard it was. It's a sad story, but at the end, I think everything worked out, I think, for all of us.
My voice uprise, cause now we oh so wise. My soul cries, cry for today with old eyes. And all jokes aside, you want my life from your ride.
Kind of see yourself of how much sacrifices they made. There were people who lost families, who lost friends, or who had no more friends, or like, you really kind of grasp what they had to go through. Like, just the sacrifice of time, like your time away from family, away from your community. Like, I'm so proud of my leaders, like just because of them, we are where we are now. Like, they put that sacrifice for us. And I'm really proud of them for doing that.
Get crunk thanks, but no thanks. Pay my own way like tanks, pay my own way like banks. Earn stripes and step my pranks. Y'all seen the skills come up. What else is there to sum up? Wop, step up and leave the whole spot done up. Question my integrity, question your future survival. Of all cats in this game, you don't want me as a rival. My soul cries, cry for the day with no eyes.
Canada to show our displeasure think will be effective to the government of Canada and to the premiers that have...
They were now starting to talk about constitutions in the world, and we thought we just got our minds boggled with land claims. Now we're starting to talk about the British North American Act. So what is that? What are we doing now again?
Without any leverage at all to trying to be amongst the first ministers, you know, what am I going to do? Open my arms and say, eat me alive.
When the opportunity came around to repatriate the Constitution back to Canada, I said, here's our opportunity. I need to entrench the Aboriginal rights within the Constitution.
The process of putting together a land claims agreement is a process really of building two things. One is a constitution and the other is a nation.
Recognizes that we are distinct people within Canada, and we're going to be here, and we're here to stay.
What is the exact meaning of self-determination? Could you, for the benefit of members of this committee, give us your definition?
We wish to be able to develop and foster and give more growth to our own society within the Canadian Confederation.
I think I see your point. What you want here is a guarantee that when discussing your relationship with the rest of the Canadian society, that your rights, whether they be historic or more recently obtained, for instance, under an agreement, that those rights must be ongoing, and that if...
Alive.
Alive. That's a better word. Alive. And that if there are to be changes, you want this Constitution to guarantee that those changes will be worked out with you on a mutually acceptable basis, in the concept of a partnership with the rest of your fellow Canadians.
That's correct. Canada is the one place that everybody live freely. Let it be that.
The Constitution is now home.
And they did it. They managed to have Inuit in there that affects us very much today now. But then young people nowadays would think that was just the norm to be recognized in there.
Our will to live together has sometimes appeared to be in deep hibernation, but it is there nevertheless, alive and tenacious, in the hearts of Canadians of every province and territory.
Our most sacred law that applies to everyone, the Constitution, we recognize the existence of Inuit, Indians, and Métis as Indigenous peoples, and it recognizes their rights. The same document protects the sanctity of the modern treaties.
And now Canada was paying attention and saying, you know, we want Aboriginal people, we want Inuit to be included in the process, and this is their land and this is their homeland, and now we're going to live together. We want to make things right.
ay 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 bên ai chấm lúa sang nước tôm thế trang in nang mình non leo nay ai nay ai 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 cho coi sắc tôn nó na ca se long lo nay ai nay ai 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 cái mi chua